its worst offenders, dumping around 190,000 tons of emissions into the atmosphere every year. While George Bush was governor here, he allowed old plants such as this one to only voluntarily reduce emissions, a policy he favours as an alternative to the Kyoto Treaty, but one which worries the rest of the world.
I don't think that you should draw the conclusion that the United States position is either you adopt Kyoto and therefore do something about global warming, or you don't adopt Kyoto and therefore you do nothing. That is not the message that I hear coming out of Washington.
Not surprisingly, the energy and chemical industries in Texas also favour this voluntary approach. They believe the existing laws are adequate to control greenhouse gases. The Kyoto Treaty would force them to make even greater reductions at a cost of billions of dollars.
There is a point in time where the cost of reducing emissions, and certainly when it's compared to the relative benefit derived from that cost, means that plants can no longer economically operate.
Ever vigilant is Michael Sommer, a scientist who lives in Houston. He set up a laboratory in his home where he tests samples taken in his neighborhood. In the past year, he's found evidence of toxic emissions mixed in with greenhouse gases. He's in no doubt that if President Bush signs the Kyoto Treaty, it would have a dramatic effect on air quality.
The residence time for carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere is only 10 years. So in a very short period of time, if we were to sign on to the goals of the Kyoto Protocol, we would see a reduction in greenhouse gases and a return to more normal conditions.
It's clear from the experience in Texas that greenhouse gas emissions need to be controlled. The question is, can America be trusted to do this without the Kyoto Treaty? Fergal Parkinson, BBC News, Texas.
This is BBC World. Golf, and Tiger Woods has just teed off as he starts the defence of the British Open title he won at St Andrews last year. The 130th Open is taking place at Royal Lytham and St Anne's, and while all the top British players are present, there is still the feeling that the winner on Sunday will come from overseas.
A seafront windmill is Lytham's most famous landmark, and for good reason. It blows hard on the Lancashire coast. The building's a tourist information centre, and many reckon it's a visitor to these shores who'll win the Open. Domestic golfers aren't really fancied at all. Colin Montgomery's a generous 33-1 with the bookmakers to win his first major.
Not being one of the top favourites now, I suppose, is taking pressure off me in a way, and I feel slightly more confident in myself going into this because of that. There's less pressure on me. The public expectation is less as well, and also the media expectation. So it does take pressure off, which is nice.
Darren Clark's another who's rarely mentioned among the favourites, despite his popularity with youngsters watching final practice. Clark's a man in form after winning recently in Dublin. He believes conditions favour the home players.
I think your winner's going to come out of somebody who's had a bit of experience playing in conditions like this in the past, and certainly the guys from Ireland, all of us, grew up playing in this, and we may be a little bit more used to it than what some of the other guys may be.
Despite the weather forecast, the bookies clearly expect Tiger Woods to retain his Open title. You'll get generous odds on just about everyone else in the field, but at least they all start with a ticket in the Lytham lottery. Damien Johnson, BBC News, Lytham St Anne's.
So while Tiger Woods is battling the conditions at Royal Lytham, a younger member of the Woods family is also on the links. 11-year-old Cheyenne Woods, Tiger's niece, is competing in the World Junior Championships in San Diego. Cheyenne is the daughter of Tiger's half-brother, Earl Woods Jr., and she's been playing golf since she was 6 years old. She's already able to drive the ball 200 metres and hopes one day to beat her famous uncle. She's already amassed an impressive array of trophies, including the World Under-10s title. Cycling, and American Lance Armstrong will be hoping to build on a terrific start to the mountain stages when racing begins again on Friday. Armstrong is bidding for a third Tour de France title. Armstrong never looked in danger during stage 11, a grueling 32-kilometre time trial between Grenoble and Chamrus. He finished the uphill race a minute ahead of his rival Jan Ullrich. Armstrong now moves into third place overall. Francois Simon retains the yellow jersey, though. A three-day Pyrenees stage of the race begins on Friday. The motorcycle 500cc circuit moves to Germany this week. Yamaha's Max Biaggi is aiming to narrow Valentino Rossi's lead at the top of the overall standings. Rossi currently leads by 26 points. The feud between the two Italians has provided most of the drama at this year's 500cc championship, but that could change this weekend. The Sachsenring circuit is notoriously tight, and Biaggi is clear that that's not his favourite. And that's all the sports news for now. Time now to remind you of the main news here on BBC World. Environment ministers from 180 countries have gathered in Bonn in Germany to try to rescue the Kyoto Treaty to fight global warming. The agreement to curb greenhouse gas emissions was thrown into disarray in March when it was rejected by President Bush. And that's all from the newsroom for now.
And far between, and the legal costs have been immense. What's more, if experience from other countries is anything to go by, the handing back of land to indigenous communities is no panacea. If only it were that simple. Coming up later in the programme, the brightest hopes for Aboriginal rebirth and a moment's reflection on the anniversary of a tragedy that affected another of Australia's separate communities. There has to be an increase in their general sense of self-esteem. Many are making an important impact on Australian life. The job is to carry the rest of their people with them. Art has become an increasingly important focus for fostering a sense of pride in Aboriginal culture. But even that is not entirely straightforward. This is Corroboree, the latest production of the Bangarra Dance Company.
I always believed my works were all part of one dreaming, and really it was just, Corroboree was done basically as a tribute to the elders that I've been able to work with over my 11 years with Bangarra.
Bangarra is a major success story. Strongly influenced by Western dance, Corroboree still has its heart in Aboriginal notions of dreamtime.
Corroboree is divided up into 3 myths, and the first myth is about Brolga, and it's about a young girl who goes on a dreaming, and she finds herself in this sacred ground, this feeding ground, a Brolga ground. And what happens is she basically learns all the different myriad types of emotions and dynamics that a Brolga would have. So it's this relationship between creature and human.
Aboriginal culture can be mystifying to many. The concept of dreamtime is not easily grasped by Western minds, and that very complexity has left it vulnerable to exploitation. Some have so distorted Aboriginal themes to make them more marketable that they have little relation to their traditional foundations. Some non-Aboriginal painters have even been found to have produced Aboriginal art under fake Indigenous-sounding names. Bangarra stands as a beacon, bridging the cultural divide.
I think Bangarra's major philosophy is that it stands strong as a cultural foundation. It just happens to use dance, theatre, as a medium to express, to break down barriers, to change the sort of token perceptions on what Aboriginal dance is. And so its purpose has a strong value. I don't think I'd be doing anything else if it was for just art's sake, you know. I think the responsibility that we have as a company and a foundation is to challenge to speak to all peoples and challenge the broader audience.
Art in its many forms is now the single biggest employer of Aboriginal people. It's an industry worth tens of millions of dollars each year, but there is a fundamental contradiction. To be commercial, many artists must amend and adapt Aboriginal concepts. When done successfully like this, it works spectacularly. When it doesn't, it ends up falling between the gulf separating Western and Aboriginal culture.
Oxyprovia is about going deeper again and awakening that spirit in every soul, and it does speak universally.
One of the ironies is that people overseas have been more interested in Aboriginal art than white Australians. Productions like this are changing that. But just as every young runner can't grow up to be Maurice Green, neither can every young Aborigine grow up to be a great painter or dancer. Art is important, but other industries must take hold. A traditional lifestyle of hunting and gathering in the outback may be a romantic notion, but it's just not possible. There has to be some integration with the rest of the Australian economy. Now, though, a break from the problems of the Aboriginal community. It wouldn't be right if this programme were to ignore an important anniversary. Just over a year ago, the state of Queensland was in mourning over another separate community. This time, the thousands of young travellers, mainly from the UK, who come to this country each year. A hostel fire in the town of Childers, just up the road from here, brought tragedy into too many lives.
Girl in the room woke me up and said the room's full of smoke, and saw a glow out the windows, and stuck my head out and saw flames coming back at us.
Chaos, absolute chaos. It was very dark, it was very eerie, it was foggy, there were flashing lights everywhere.
It was a really foggy morning, and I can remember seeing the young backpackers with the white sheets around them, and the smell, the smoke. I can remember smelling the smoke.
Just over a year ago, a fire began in the early hours of the morning. It quickly spread through a backpackers' hostel, killing 15 young people. 1 year on, the small Queensland town of Childers still bears the scars.
That tragedy that happened across the road has been with me every day in the last 12 months, as it has a number of our people here. There's many a time when you're walking down the street and just a tear rolls down your cheek for no reason.
The burnt-out wreck of the building has become a macabre tourist attraction. It hasn't helped the town.
I think that people need to know what happened, and I certainly respect their right to stop and look. But when it has something right in the centre of your town, on a national highway with 6,500 vehicles a day passing, it's difficult for us to start that recovery process until we eliminate that black charred building across the road.
Childers is a community of about 6,000 people. Most are involved in the fruit farms which drive the local economy. Thousands of backpackers pass through the region each year to work on those farms, earning enough money to pay for their extended working holidays. This time last year, Phil Vaughan was one such travelling worker. He was in the hostel on the night of the fire. He'd been having a party.
Drinking with a few of them that night. So had a few birthday parties that were quite continuous on for a few days. And I always think of those guys and just getting out and how lucky it was. Another minute or so, I'm pretty sure like the room that I was in, we wouldn't have got out.
He did leave Childers after the fire, but like many has been drawn back to the area, even though the tragedy is very much still on his mind.
Oh, just about the people and just all the good times that went on in there and stuff like that. Just thinking about the guys and yeah, what they'd be up to now, what the other guys are up to, the ones that are still around.
You know, you think, if we had have done this, or should we have done that, or why us? You know, why us? And it's a personal feeling I have. I have a personal feeling of guilt, and I think we all do.
We all felt a heavy burden on our shoulders, the fact that this town that we thought was so safe had so badly let down so many young people. And I think somewhere at times I said that would people ever trust us with their children again?
Just a bit closer in, Greg.
The trust is coming back, thanks in no small part to the genuine grief shown at the loss of young lives, even though the dead were mainly strangers passing through, and Childers does need the travellers.
I think the general population accepts that the backpackers do play a major role in a town like this, not just for the money, but for the enthusiasm that they bring in, and just because they're young people from other countries.
Whenever you hear the name of a place like Port Arthur, instantly your thoughts go to what happened there. And I know that will happen a lot with Childers into the future. I'd like to think that while people recognise us for that fact, they'll also recognise that this small rural community responded magnificently to support those kids in their hour of need. They were like family to us, and I think that we'd like to be remembered in the long run for a community that cared.
The town of Childers there showing a great deal of integrity in its time of trouble and proving that this country can respond with honour to a crisis. When confronted with the sheer enormity of the Aboriginal problem, it is very easy to despair. But pretending it's less bad than it is certainly won't help. To quote an often used phrase, the best response for this country is simply do more, try harder. And on that note, from me, Michael Peschart, until the next time, it is goodbye.
In hospital, every crisis can look like a drama. But here the emotions are real. Go behind the scenes at one of India's leading hospitals and watch the medics in action.
Now the baby is stable and doing well.
Follow the lives of patients.
Chances of recovery, I should say 100% at the moment.
And witness life-threatening situations as they arise.
Anything can go wrong at any time.
Hospital, real life and death drama. This weekend at these times on BBC World.
The health of the planet explored in Earth Report at these times on BBC World.
World News next on BBC World.
After their meeting in London, President Bush and the Prime Minister Tony Blair joined the other leaders of the planet's 8 principal industrialised countries in Genoa to confront the most pressing global issues. What challenges will they face and how will the rest of the world react? Continuing coverage of the G8 summit this weekend on BBC World.
Meticulous preparation is the key to an incisive interview. Hard Talk in 30 minutes on BBC World.
This is BBC World.
Trying to save the Kyoto Protocol on climate change and pressure dissenting nations. Agreeing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions will dominate the conference in Germany. President Bush emphasizes the US relationship with Britain before the G8 summit. And Mira, the wife of Slobodan Milosevic, arrives in the Netherlands to visit him in jail. Welcome to BBC World News. I'm Nick Gowing. Environment ministers from 180 countries will start trying to rescue the Kyoto Treaty on global warming shortly. They join their officials who've been meeting all week in the German city of Bonn. The 1997 Kyoto Agreement commits industrialized countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The protocol was undermined in a major way in March, when US President George W. Bush said it would weaken America's economy.
It's Beethoven who dominates the town square here, and it's unlikely that he'll have to give up his plinth to a monument celebrating a conference which halted global warming. Ministers from over 180 countries have already agreed to global cuts in emissions of greenhouse gases 5% below the 1990 levels. But here they must decide how this will be achieved.
4, 3, 2, 1, global warming has begun!
Since George Bush pulled out of the deal, the argument is between Japan and Europe. The Japanese want flexible rules, allowing them to plant more trees in place of steep cuts in pollution and weaker penalties for missing targets. Europe doesn't like it, but really wants a deal.
When I came to Bonn, I was a bit pessimistic, given many political statements which were made during the last couple of weeks that perhaps it would not be possible to reach agreements. However, I have the impression that it is possible to reach a result.
If all the countries gathered here don't reach agreement in the next few days, it won't be the end of Kyoto, but it will be a failure. The failure to put national differences aside to resolve a problem which the whole world, even the Americans, agree is a growing threat to our planet. Tom Heap, BBC News in Bonn.
President George W. Bush is to meet the British Prime Minister and Queen Elizabeth today on his first official visit to Britain. Before the weekend G8 summit in Genoa, discussions with Tony Blair are expected to focus on differences over global warming and the US plans for a nuclear missile defense system. The visit will emphasize the US relationship with Britain.
Mr. Bush got a low-key but friendly welcome, and in return has been talking about a relationship that is strong, special and unique. He says he's looking forward to spending quality time with Tony Blair, which may offer him an opportunity to rehearse his arguments before he meets other European leaders at the G8 summit in Genoa. Britain has been less openly hostile to Mr. Bush's policies on the Kyoto Treaty and missile defence, and may try to play a traditional role of bridging transatlantic differences. But time is running out. The successful missile test at the weekend, when the US blew up a dummy warhead, is encouraging an administration that is impatient to press on with a new security system. Its officials are talking about bumping into the restraints of the ABM treaty within months, and that may mean abandoning the treaty sooner rather than later. At Genoa, for all the precautions against protesters, the profoundest disagreements may be inside the meeting hall. There's no sign yet that either Europe or America sees any grounds to compromise on issues that both feel passionately can affect the future of the planet. Brian Hanrahan, BBC News.
The wife of the former Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic has just arrived in the Netherlands to visit her husband. She's due to arrive around now at the United Nations jail at The Hague, where he's facing war crimes charges. Mira Markovic has been granted a 3-day visa by the Dutch authorities. She will see her husband for the first time since he was handed over to the UN 3 weeks ago.
Mira Milosevic, known by some as the Lady Macbeth of Belgrade, on her way to join her husband in prison. They met when they were teenagers and they've very seldom been apart, so Mira is taking the first opportunity she has to be with her man. He has not been seen since his extraordinary court appearance 3 weeks ago. Then he was in confident, defiant mood. Presumably the visit of his wife will buoy him up even further. The two have always been inseparable, and that might be a problem now for Mrs. Milosevic. To what extent does she share blame for the trauma of the Balkan Wars? Might she even face arrest herself today?
It is at least possible that a sealed indictment is awaiting Mira Milosevic, that actually, secretly, they wanted to come here in order to arrest her. A visit to this prison could be very interesting indeed. Justin Webb, BBC News, The Hague.
Let's now go live to Scavenham Prison outside The Hague to our correspondent, Janet Barry. Janet, what about that line that there could be a sealed indictment? Does she have any guarantees?
She doesn't have any guarantees at all, and that's certainly one theory. The Dutch government were extremely reluctant to offer Mrs. Markovic a visa for these 3 days to come and see her husband, and they only did so under a lot of pressure from the War Crimes Tribunal here in The Hague. So a sealed indictment certainly can't be ruled out at all. And obviously Ms. Markovic absolutely back to the hilt everything that her husband did. So we're going to have to see. We're expecting her here at the detention centre in Scheveningen imminently. There's been a lot of police activity in the last half hour. Her flight touched down about an hour ago, Schiphol Airport at Amsterdam, about 45 minutes drive away from here. So she's due here shortly. There have been a lot of crash barriers put up. We could expect protests here. The Dutch government, the Dutch authorities, obviously very concerned too that she may prove to be a target, very concerned too about her security.
Now, what kind of contact can she have with her husband? How regulated will it be?
Well, what they do have here at the detention centre for all of the prisoners, not just for Mr. Milosevic, is a private meeting room, like a conjugal room almost, if you like, where couples can spend time together, and they will be left alone there for a while when she comes here to see Mr. Milosevic. But the Dutch government are giving away very, very little indeed. The authorities here are giving away very little about what her plans are, just that she's going to be here for 3 days and obviously guarding her very, very closely. It's believed she'll be taken to a safe house after she's been to see her husband here, because she could obviously be the target of attacks.
One final thought, though. She will and he will be monitored throughout, because no one's quite sure what they might discuss with each other.
Well, yes, they do have to be careful about this. And another risk, and may not be too far-fetched a risk, is that both of Mr. Milosevic's parents were suicides and Mrs. Markovic's parents were very unstable. And there obviously must be some sort of a concern there that left together alone, that there may be some sort of a thought of a suicide pact. So they will be watched here when Mrs. Markovic comes to visit her husband, Mr. Milosevic, in the detention centre here behind me, imminently, as I say.
Janet, thanks for joining us live from Scheveningen Prison outside The Hague. One person is reported to have been injured and several buildings have been damaged in 2 separate explosions in the Macedonian capital, Skopje. The first device went off in a shopping centre in a northern suburb populated mostly by minority Albanians. A second blast, in which a woman was apparently wounded, followed in a different district of the capital near a car service station. Anti-globalization demonstrators have been arriving in Genoa to protest at this week's G8 summit. Hundreds of thousands are expected to turn up to register their dissatisfaction with world leaders.
You can become a carp. Everybody kind of lay back.
After their pilgrimage to get here, anti-G8 protesters are given a quick course in how to stage peaceful protests. A few are veterans of earlier campaigns.
I think the police violence at these actions has been really extreme and has been building and building, and it's very important for people to have some preparation for that, to think about what might happen, to role play some of what might happen, just to be prepared for what it's like out on the street and to have ways of being safer.
Behind the camaraderie there is, quite naturally, anxiety. But though they're campaigning on a variety of issues, there's a unity of purpose spanning the different ages and backgrounds.
Absolutely 100% committed to non-violent democratic action. We're here proposing alternative ways to make decisions. We use forms of consensus decision making whereby everybody has equal rights to say there's no hierarchy, unlike in this society we live in, where we're told we're not engaged, we're not empowered to make decisions that directly affect our lives.
Inside what's called the red zone, sealed off from the growing army of demonstrators, the police rehearse one more time outside the Palazzo Ducale. It's here that the G8 leaders will consider how much to concede on emotive questions driving the protesters, like relieving poverty in developing countries.
Queste sono le maggiori istituzioni a cui I paesi africani
The intensity of feeling among veteran lobbyists from pressure groups was spelt out when they met Genoa City Council. A poster buttressed the point.
It's inconceivable and totally unacceptable that gold bars lie gathering dust in IMF bank vaults when they should be spent saving lives.
The major players are adept at getting the message across, at least to the wider world, but no one's sure if the G8 are listening.
At the moment, it's not looking like we'll get any significant steps on debt cancellation. We hope that the tens of thousands of people marching peacefully on Saturday will show them that this is still an issue that people around the world care about, and the poorest people are reliant on them to do something about it.
No, la
On the streets here, there are more prosaic concerns. The local cafe's on the wrong side of the forbidden red zone. Beyond that, there's fear. Efforts are underway among the moderate majority to draw up a code of protest. It would commit demonstrators to non-violent action. But given the number of small radical groups who'll be on the streets, nothing can be guaranteed. Brian Barron, BBC News, Genoa.
Well, as we reported earlier, on his way to Genoa, President George W. Bush is now in Britain. We can get more details on this visit now from our diplomatic editor, Brian Hanrahan, who's at the British Museum in central London, which the President will be visiting shortly. Brian, of course, George Bush is not Bill Clinton. How would you describe the Bush-Blair relationship?
I think it's still feeling its way. I think what they're hoping to do on this occasion is to sit down and try and establish a relationship, because so far it's really been contacts, I would have thought, rather than anything terribly close. Mr. Bush has been very polite about this. He's talked about Chequers, which is where the meeting is going to be, as a wonderful place to go. He's heard so much about it. He's talked about the relationship with Britain as being unique, as being very strong, as being special, a word that the British politicians are very careful not to use, because they don't like claiming to have a special relationship with America anymore. They know that they can be sneered at as being a little power that trying to be too big for its boots. So I think Mr. Bush is going out of his way to say, you know, we can have a relationship here, and that he does see the traditional British role as being a bridger, a builder of bridges between Europe and America, as something that he hopes will come through.
Brian, of course, shortly after the President took over in America, Mr. Blair went to Camp David, and they decided that they did have one thing in common, which is using the same toothpaste. Surely it's got better than that.
Well,